Heathrow, the most important airport in Europe.
It might even be the most important airport in the world, but here's the thing. It's a breaking point.
Welcoming nearly 85 million people through its gates in 2025, this is the busiest airport on the continent. The problem is that's about 3 million more people than it was ever designed to handle. Add in the fact that in 2025, nearly £300 billion worth of goods were handled at Heathrow, which is around 75% of all UK air cargo, and the problem becomes pretty impossible to ignore. A big expansion is well overdue.
The UK's government has been dragging its feet over a major upgrade for decades. One leader and their cabinet supports the move, the next doesn't, and on we go. But that's hopefully all about to change.
Fresh plans have been submitted to overhaul the airport for an eye-watering £49 billion. And ministers have promised to accelerate the process. So, are we finally about to see this expansion take off, or is Heathrow heading for yet more delay? There are two main types of passenger airports. The first is a point-to-point model, mostly offering direct flights from an origin to a destination. They're secondary to major facilities and often prioritise shorter trips with low-cost carriers. For examples of point-to-point systems, take a look at Chicago Midway, Luton, or maybe even London Gatwick.
The second type of airport is a hub. These are essentially massive sorting centres that act as central transfer points for long-haul connections from all over the globe. So think Hartsfield-Jackson, Chicago O'Hare, Amsterdam Schiphol, Changi, those are all hubs.
London Heathrow is the UK's only hub, and there are a few reasons why we can confidently call it one of the most important airports in the world. The first is geography. By luck, the UK is in an ideal location to connect North America with Asia, Europe and Africa. And beyond connections elsewhere, London Heathrow also happens to be in London, the third most travelled to city by international visitors in 2025.
Heathrow has been named the best connected airport on the planet for 3 years running. We're talking more than 59,000 possible connections to 226 destinations. The site is crazy busy, but comparatively tiny, and that pushes up slot value.
Just take a look at its footprint in comparison to Europe's second busiest aviation hub, Istanbul Airport. Now that causes a pretty obvious issue. There are only so many flights that can take off and land on the runways in the course of a day, and so airlines buy operating time slots from each other. Because demand at Heathrow is so high, flight slots here are the most valuable on the planet. In 2016, Oman Air reportedly paid a record-breaking £55.5 million to KLM for a pair of morning slots at London Heathrow. For context, the previous world record was nearly £40 million paid to SAS for a pair of slots in 2015. That was also at London Heathrow.
Look, I'll admit, I am actually pretty personally invested in the future of this airport. I'm constantly using it to reach some of the amazing places that I get the privilege of visiting. But at this point, I can get pretty jaded about travelling. Airports are often either stressful places that you have to run through, or somewhere you're stuck in thanks to delays. But as a kid, they're amazing. And if there's one question that you're guaranteed to get as a parent when you are sitting in departures watching those planes taking off, it's, Daddy, how on earth does something like that actually fly? It's one thing to explain iterative design theoretically, but as you might imagine, I am somebody who wants my family to share my passion for engineering. It's why I'm such a big fan of KiwiCo. They're the masters of bringing STEM to life, empowering the next generation of innovators and problem solvers through hands-on learning. I worked on their Flex and Fly plane launcher recently, and I saw the exact moment that aerodynamics just started to click. Right about the same time that I got hit by a model plane, funnily enough. Like it or not, kids spend a lot of time on screens now. Getting to build something together where the end product is a physical item they can feel proud of creating themselves is a game changer. They've got kits suitable for children of all ages and interests, geared towards developing critical thinking skills and creativity. So it's never too early or too late to inspire someone you love to get into engineering. KiwiCo is offering our subscribers 50% off your first monthly crate when you use my code, the B1M. I genuinely love building these kits for my family, and I'm pretty sure you will too. To get your hands on one of these, scan the QR code on screen or click the link below. But right now, I've got a flight to catch, so let's check back in on how that expansion's going.
According to the airport's owners, there's a risk that if this expansion doesn't happen soon, then Heathrow may lose its mega hub status. That's in part because competitors such as Paris, Frankfurt, Madrid and Amsterdam are all planning to enhance their facilities to absorb future demand. Now, the number of runways is obviously crucial for landing and takeoff capacity, which is why Heathrow is a bit stuck, as it has just 2. By comparison, Charles de Gaulle has 4, as does Tokyo Haneda. Denver has a mighty 6.
Now, that's not to say that Heathrow hasn't been upgraded over recent decades. It is always evolving. In the background, baggage systems are overhauled, new terminals are added, old terminals are demolished or modernised, and facilities are generally brought up to the latest standards. But to actually get more people to the gates, they need more planes to land. And to support that aim, early in 2025, the UK's Labour government committed to finally making a Heathrow expansion happen, albeit several previous governments had also already got to that point.
By the summer of 2025, 2 plans had been put forward, one by the owners of the airport and another by Aurora Group, headed by the hotel tycoon Surinder Arora. While differing in cost and scale, with the airport's own option sitting at the upper end, £49 billion, both plans recommended building a third runway to increase capacity. The government chose to support the plan proposed by the airport's owners. That's the more expensive £49 billion one. So let's break down what's in it. Under this proposal, the boundaries to the north of the site would increase to construct a new third runway. Stretching for 3.5 kilometres compared to 3.9 and 3.7 for the existing 2 strips, the airport's owners claim it'll increase capacity to a whopping 756,000 flights and 150 million passengers a year. That's up from 480,000 flights and 84.5 million passengers today.
The idea is that aircraft will land around 550 metres further west on the new runway, which will allow them to remain at a higher altitude over residential areas. But before landing paths can be considered, the tarmac needs to be laid, and as you might have noticed, because of its more westerly position, the new runway route runs through some existing road infrastructure.
The M25 will have to be moved. About 130 metres to the west, a new section of motorway is going to be constructed offline. The current motorway will be left as it is until the new alignments are completed to limit disruption. The road will be widened between junctions 14 and 15 with the A3044, the A4, the T5 Spur Road, the Southern Perimeter Road and a number of surrounding roundabouts and junctions being realigned. New link roads should simplify movements between the M25 and the M4 to limit weaving and improve safety. That new section of M25 will include a road tunnel underneath the new third runway. The tunnel itself would likely be constructed using a cut and cover technique. That's where a reinforced concrete box is put around the road to encase the road infrastructure, and then soil is filled over the top. In this case, the runway will run over the top. Next are the passenger processing areas. Multiple new satellite terminals are going to be constructed, including one new major terminal called T5X to the west of the existing T5. Terminal 2 would also be expanded, which would lead to the closure of the current oldest operating terminal, T3.
Elsewhere, new freight warehouses would be constructed to the south to increase cargo capacity by a whopping 50%. There'd also be a new truck park to stop heavy vehicles parking on local roads overnight, and 2 new parkways, one to the north and one to the south.
The expansion goes on to include enhanced rail capacity, improved bus and coach services, and a better pedestrian experience.
But we've been here before. In fact, as we've made clear, for decades the UK has been desperately failing to overhaul its most important airports.
When you boil it down, the main reason for that is actually pretty simple. As former Transport Secretary Justin Greening once said, Heathrow is built in the wrong place. Before the Second World War, what is now Europe's most important hub was just a modest private airport, home to one small grass runway that was used for building and testing aircraft. The government turned it into an airbase during the war, but post-1945 there wasn't really a need for RAF Heston anymore. The aerodrome was handed back to the Air Ministry to create a new civilian airport for London.
They call it Heathrow locally. A few years back it was 7 square miles of quiet Middlesex countryside.
That sounds great, but decades later that origin has caused some pretty fundamental problems. Landing at Heathrow is incredible because of the sweeping views of the city that you get as your plane descends, but those views are an issue. Planes generally try to land into the wind as a safety strategy as it helps maximise lift and slow down their approach, and it's no different at Heathrow. The UK's prevailing wind is from the southwest, meaning planes descend from the east, and that's directly above one of the world's busiest cities. As a result, Heathrow has strict overnight restrictions which drastically limit capacity, and to protect flight paths, London can't build anything taller than the Shard. During the day, jets swirl over the city, polluting suburbs with fumes and noise. So why develop a major airport here? Well, as I said earlier, this only became a civilian airport back in 1946. The first permanent passenger building at Heathrow opened in 1955, and with the aviation boom in the decades that followed, it saw organic growth. Now, we've already told you that the government supports the Heathrow owners' plan, but why build a new runway in the first place? Why not just build a new facility somewhere else? A recurring suggestion in political circles is that a massive airport could be created over in the Thames estuary. Possibly the most famous example of this was Boris Island, named after the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. However, in 2014, the Airports Commission, charged with answering London's aviation dilemma, dismissed a Thames estuary airport. They claimed it would cost at the very least £70 to £90 billion to build, using around £30 to £60 billion of public money. Originally, the Commission came up with 3 options: a new landing strip at Gatwick Airport, a third runway at Heathrow, or simply lengthening an existing runway. Now, the additional runway at Gatwick would have cost less, but the facility handles merely a fraction of the long-haul flights that Heathrow does. It's not nearly as well connected to London and the rest of the world. Although separately, a privately funded £2.2 billion plan to enhance Gatwick was given the go-ahead by the UK government last year. And so we're left with a Heathrow runway extension or a third runway. The body's final report backed a third landing strip because it offers higher capacity and could be built further to the north and west to limit disruption over London.
Of course, there's no denying the enormous negative impact that an airport can have on a surrounding area. Hundreds of homes would have to be compulsory purchased and demolished under the third runway plan being put forward by Heathrow Airport. And an increase in capacity means more planes, which can lead to an increase in noise and potentially poorer air quality.
For decades, communities around the airport have been caught in limbo land by the third runway plans. With little certainty about the future, historically a number of homeowners struggled to sell their properties, leaving them feeling trapped. Any decision, at least one way or another, would at least provide them with some clarity. But on the other side of the coin, Heathrow is a huge source of employment and income for nearby communities. Nearly 100,000 people work within its boundaries, making it an economy in its own right.
Over the years, various unsuccessful attempts have been made to expand the site. But before I run you through them, I need to put the seatbelt sign on because we're in for some turbulent British politics. Please now return to your seats. I regret to inform you that we won't be serving hot drinks during this time. Order!
Though talk of expanding Heathrow has been around ever since it opened, discussions about the third runway began all the way back in the 1980s. But legitimate consideration didn't really come to pass until the early 2000s. In 2003, the airport's owners sought approval for a third runway that gained support in the government's aviation white paper. Fast forward to 2009, and the plan was approved by Labour Prime Minister Gordon Brown, even though some of his own party were completely against the move. So it's no surprise that in 2010, when Conservative David Cameron became PM, he cancelled the plans, calling Gordon Brown pig-headed for backing them. A poor choice of words if you ask me. However, jump just 2 years down the line and Cameron changed his mind.
I do believe we need to establish a form of review that will bring parties together and make a decision about airport capacity.
But history repeated itself, and members of his own party weren't so keen. Come 2015, future Conservative Prime Minister Boris Johnson threatened to lie down in front of bulldozers to stop construction of a third runway.
I will join you. I will lie down with you in front of those bulldozers.
3 years later, a Commons vote in 2018 supported an expansion of Heathrow.
The ayes to the right, 415. The noes to the left, 190.
But, of course, by 2020, the plans were blocked by the Court of Appeal because the UK forgot to account for its commitment to the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. Later that same year, the UK's Supreme Court took that decision and overruled it, allowing a new proposal. Fast forward to today, and as I outlined earlier, the government has now thrown its backing behind the third runway plan put forward by Heathrow Airport Limited.
It's hard to overstate just how contentious this issue really is in the UK. For decades, it has split cabinets, political parties, even households down the middle. But for the time being, we have a plan that the UK government actually supports. Although at £49 billion, it's not going to come cheap.
Now, this isn't going to be a taxpayer problem. Heathrow Airport Limited, or HAL, says it will privately finance its expansion plan and that £15 billion of that is current modernisation works. The group also said that redeveloping the airport would grow the UK economy by 0.43% of GDP. But the UK government now says that a third runway would only add about 1/10 of the financial return projected by the airport itself, giving a boost of just 0.05% each year. Heathrow says the Department of Transport's projection is very narrow and doesn't take all factors into consideration. And even now, those calculations might not matter. Within the last few months, British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, the ground handling experts Swissport, and the Director General of the International Air Transport Association, Willie Walsh, have all thrown their backing behind Aurora Group's shorter runway plan.
The government-backed proposal may manage to muddle its way through planning, but even so, it's still a huge gamble. £49 billion is a lot of money. There's no guarantee of success, and no going back once you've started. So if you didn't already know, then now you do. Trying to land a successful idea for how to expand Heathrow Airport is a bit like trying to fly an A380 through the eye of a needle.
Of course, any planning application is going to need to meet the standards set out in the HENPS, or Heathrow Expansion National Policy Statement. Previously known as the ANPS, the draft HENPS was published in summer 2026, and while it might sound incredibly dull, it's actually really important. Any Heathrow expansion planning application has to meet 4 government tests on climate change, air quality, noise and economic growth as set out in the HENPS.
But just to clarify, this policy document doesn't actually grant planning permission itself. It's a national framework, a bit like a rulebook that sets out what a Heathrow expansion can and can't do. That's going through a consultation period at the moment, and it's hoped it'll become a finalised policy document at the end of 2026.
Or at least that's what everyone's hoping. We've been stung by this process so many times before. Earlier this year, members of the UK's Labour leadership and the UK's Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, saw eye to eye on the need for an expansion of the country's most important airports. But who knows what the situation is going to be by 2029. That's the date by which the government plans to make a final decision on planning applications. We have a tendency these days to ditch our prime ministers with the changing of the wind. Even since we started working on this video, Andy Burnham has replaced Keir Starmer. In a way, the Heathrow fiasco really is the perfect example of why the UK struggles to complete major infrastructure projects, and publicly, intense opposition still remains for the entire expansion. Campaign groups include people who don't want to lose their homes, and environmentalists who fear what the impact of increased air traffic will bring, even if HAL claims the expansion goes hand in hand with the airport's aim of being net zero by 2050.
For now, consultations are continuing. The aim is for consent to be given by 2030 and for the new runway to begin operating by 2035. But given our recent track record, I maybe wouldn't hold your breath. After so many decades of deliberation, now really is the moment for the UK government to give consent and get on with the expansion of Heathrow Airport. The future of one of the world's most important airports depends on it. This video was sponsored by KiwiCo. If, like me, you love construction and engineering and you want to inspire the engineers of the future, then scan the QR code on screen or click the link below to get your hands on a KiwiCo kit today. Don't forget that if you use my code, the B1M, you're going to get 50% off your first monthly crate. And as always, guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you subscribe to the B1M. I really have got to try and hunt down where that plane went.